Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you like this podcast, you will love my new anthology called Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Check it out, and you'll hear from 49 authors about all sorts of things moms don't have time to do. All the authors have been on this podcast. Also, check out my TikTok with Zibby and Tracy, my other podcast, Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracy. Check out Moms Don't Have Time to Write on Medium. And of course, my new publishing company called Zibby Books. And now back to our daily author interview site and a quick hello from some of my kids. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Enjoy the show. Catherine Price is the author of The Power of Fun, How to Feel Alive Again. Dubbed the Marie Kondo of Brains by the New York Times, Catherine Price is an award-winning science journalist and speaker and the author of numerous books, including How to Break Up with Your Phone and Vitamania, How Vitamins Revolutionize the Way We Think About Food. She is also the creator of Screen Life Balance, a resource hub dedicated to helping people scroll less and live more. Her work has appeared in various publications, including The Best American Science Writing, The New York Times, the Oprah Magazine, Popular Science, Los Angeles Times, San Francisco Chronicle, The Washington Post Magazine, Slate Time, and Men's Journal, among others. Welcome, Catherine. Thank you so much for coming back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss the power of fun, how to feel alive again. And you were last on for How to Break Up with Your Phone.
Thank you so much for having me, Zibby.
This is so fun to do because we get to talk about fun the whole time. You totally convinced me about why this is important. Then you gave us really great actionable advice on how to incorporate it in our life with quizzes and got questions. And I don't know, I finished and I was like, okay, I know what I need to do. I know how I'm going to do it. Thank you very much. And now I just hope I do it.
That is really wonderful to hear.
So tell listeners a little bit about this book and especially what you talked about in the introduction and how it came to be with your daughter and everything.
Well, in a kind of surprising way to me, The Power of Fun is a direct follow-up to my last book that you and I spoke about, How to Break Up with Your Phone. And the reason there is that I had gone through all these steps to quote unquote break up with my phone, which, as you know, doesn't mean totally dumping it. It's just about creating better boundaries with our devices. And I felt very good about myself. And I was like, oh, yay. I have a healthier relationship. Not perfect. It's still not perfect because I think that's impossible, but it was healthier. But then I realized that I had forgotten something really important, which is that once you create more time for yourself, you're going to end up with a lot more time. And unless you figure out what you want to do with that time, you're going to end up right back on your device. So I ended up having this moment where my husband and I were deliberately taking a break from our devices, kind of like a tech Shabbat type thing. And I had this, which should have been like a glorious hour in front of me where I was sitting in our living room and he was out and our daughter was taking a nap and I could do whatever I wanted to for a whole hour. And as you know, in early parenthood, that's a pretty glorious opportunity. But I was sitting there and I realized I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with that time because I'd gotten so used to filling my time with stupid things on my phone that I didn't know what I wanted to do anymore. And so I really had a bit of a crisis in that moment because that was not that went against my self-definition as a self-aware kind of interested person. And so I asked myself a question that I had asked people when I was researching how to break up with your phone. And that was, what's something you always say you want to do, but supposedly don't have time for? And in my case, my answer to that question was, well, I always say I want to learn how to play guitar. Like I have a guitar, but I've never learned how to play it. And I ended up signing up for this guitar class. And I experienced this kind of magical feeling during the class. I was trying to figure out what the best word was to describe it. And the best word that came to mind was fun. And so that's how I got started on this project about writing a book about the power of fun.
Wow, who knew? I should just pick up the extra guitar my daughter has. And, sounds like you had a great group of people in the class too. You're all like going for drinks and everything. So lucky you. Yeah, that was so fun.
It was such an interesting experience because it was at this technically a children's music studio. So it's run by this guy named Mr. John. And what's funny is that because a lot of the people have found the studio through their children, the adults also refer to the head of the studio as Mr. John, even though we're all old enough to not have to do that. But it was very interesting because I realized it wasn't just about getting a new skill. I think that's something that people often are misled by when they think about fun. They think, oh, if I'm going to have fun, I have to just add more activities to my schedule. And we're all already, moms don't have time to have fun, right? Like we don't have time to add more things to our to-do lists. So we feel really overwhelmed and then kind of almost angry about the concept that we should be even trying to prioritize fun. But I realized it wasn't about the skill and it wasn't about the activity per se. It was this feeling that I was getting, this buoyant energy. And the important thing that I noticed was that energy stayed with me through the week. And it ended up giving me more energy to do the other things in my life that were less fun, like chores or getting my daughter ready for school. Even yesterday, I actually had an experience where I played music with some people and I came home. I had been super grumpy this weekend. I think it was because of a fun deficit, honestly, because I've been in such restricted mode. But I had an experience of fun yesterday and I am in such a better mood today. So that was one of the most important takeaways for me, was that it seems like yet another to-do, but we shouldn't think about fun that way at all. Instead, we should think about it as a gift we give ourselves that we will be better able to cope with all of the other things that are on our lists.
It's so true. I was a little concerned because you do have a passage that says, don't turn your fun into work. But I feel like I did that. So now I don't know what to do.
Well, that's more about the feeling of it. The point of that is simply that if you start to resent fun, if you start to just feel like, oh, just to have fun and feel kind of angry about it, then you know that something's not right. And that's when I want you to back off, because it should feel like something light and like a gift to yourself, not like another to-do. So if you start feeling that way, chances are you should kind of shift your approach and experiment with different ideas.
So what does the sensation of true fun really do for us? Why is it so important?
Well, first of all, the sensation of true fun is really when we feel joyfully alive. And I felt that myself. And then I wanted to check that feeling to make sure I just wasn't overreacting, because I was like, maybe I am just so starved for fun that I'm having this like life-changing experience in my guitar class, but other people are like, yeah, that's nice. Because if you look up fun in the dictionary, it just says lighthearted pleasure. But meanwhile, I'm like, being moved to tears by the profound experience of this life-affirming joy that I'm getting in my guitar class. And so I ended up recruiting a new group of people off of my Screen Life Balance email list. And I called them the Fun Squad. And I asked people to share with me 3 experiences from their own lives that they would describe as having been, quote unquote, so fun. It was very technical. And I did this smack in the middle of like the lockdowns of the pandemic. I mean, it was in summer of 2020. So it was really interesting to ask people, kind of awkward, but also interesting to ask people about fun when all of us were feeling pretty fun starved. And I read through these anecdotes and I noticed that the energy behind them was not unique to me at all. It was a really interesting experience where I'd read through these little stories people shared with me, one after the other, and I would feel so joyful, but also nearly be moved to tears. I often actually did have tears in my eyes because people were just expressing these little moments from their lives where they felt alive, and it felt so human and so connecting. Some little anecdotes about like going out in high school and squishing mud through my toes with my friend Margaret, or standing in the rain with my grandfather as a child, deliberately getting soaked. Or just running into the ocean barefoot. Like it was just these small moments. So that was how I confirmed that I was not totally off base. I then realized I needed to come up with a better definition of fun than just lighthearted pleasure, because clearly that was not all that was happening here. And the definition I came up with, which I checked with these people to, make sure that I was not just totally out on a limb myself, was that these moments of what I call true fun are the confluence of 3 states, which is playfulness, connection, and flow. So playfulness, adults like really tense up when you say playfulness. So to clarify, I just mean a lighthearted attitude, not caring too much about the outcome of what you're doing. Even I would say like our conversation right now is playful because we're just, or at least I am enjoying your company.
I'm enjoying it too. I'm having fun.
Like it's,
yes.
Yeah. So in other words, it doesn't need to be playing games or God forbid, like charades or something like that. And then connection, sometimes people described having true fun in moments where they felt truly connected to their physical body or to an activity or to their authentic selves. That was a very common theme, is just when we're having fun, we are in touch with our authentic selves, which I think is part of the reason it can feel so powerful. But in the vast majority of anecdotes, there also was another person or sometimes a creature like a dog or a cat, but some other living creature involved. And that was true for introverts in addition to extroverts, which is really interesting. And then flow is the psychological state of getting so wrapped up in your present experience that you lose track of time. So not like losing track of time, binging Netflix, but more being actively engaged. So I think all of those states are great on their own, but when you put them together, you get true fun. So to answer your question, there's actually not a lot of research about fun per se. I think because we don't have a good definition of it, and also because we typically think of fun as being frivolous. But if you look at it as the confluence of playfulness and connection and flow, there's actually a ton of research on all those states. And just some of the things they do for us, they really lower our stress levels, which is incredibly important both for our mental health, but then also for our physical health. Because when we're chronically stressed, our cortisol levels are high, and increased cortisol rates over time are associated with all sorts of negative health things like heart attack, heart disease, stroke, like bad, very bad. And also, I think we radically underestimate the importance of human connection as a health issue. So loneliness and isolation are so bad for us. You know, their health effects there's one big study that likened their effects to those of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Like, that's nuts. So anything we can do that brings us closer to other people is going to improve our physical health. And, most importantly, it feels good. Like, we always forget that part, but it also just makes you more productive and more creative and happier. So I can go on. Sorry, I just like took a 10-minute tangent
so
there.
Interesting. I recently interviewed Florence Williams about her book, Heartbreak. Did you talk to her?
Heartbreak. Oh, I haven't. No. I'm thinking of a different book.
She has a new book coming out, or now it's out by the time this airs, but it's called Heartbreak, a personal and scientific journal. And she's a science journalist writing about heartbreak. But we literally just had this conversation about loneliness and how she met with some doctors who could tell by your white blood cells how lonely you are.
Oh my gosh, I was looking over my shoulder because I have her book, The Nature Fix.
Yes,
if we want to have a Florence,
that one.
It's great. It's great. We want to have a Florence Williams like promo right here. Read her books because they're so interesting. She does such a beautiful job, I think, of weaving together her personal experience with science. She also wrote a book, I believe, called Breasts, didn't she?
I don't know. I don't remember reading about that.
That's I am pretty sure she did. And the book Breasts, everyone out there, fellow moms, is really good.
She did an Audible original, Breasts Unbound, maybe?
Yes, so she wrote an original book called Breasts. So I'm just going to keep saying breasts over and over again.
Just keep talking about it.
But everyone should read that book. It's so good.
I think there should be a panel with you and her and also Eve Rodsky.
Yes.
Because the three of you, and I was happy to see that you mentioned the unicorn space in the book, because the whole time I was like, this is kind of like unicorn space, although you guys are coming at it at different ways. And Florence is coming at it a different way, but basically you're all trying to help us all live better, more fulfilling, happier lives and feel more like connected and grounded and have a life of meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all this science in different ways. But anyway, I'm happy to moderate or something, but that would be really fun.
Done. Let's make that happen.
Okay, we'll make that happen. That would be really fun, because ultimately the things that you're espousing, and them too, right? This is what life is all about. I mean, you have a whole chapter where you're like, okay, we're all going to die, like, and you're like, sorry to bring you down in this book about fun, but it's true. And I think about that all the time, right? We all have this set amount of finite time, uncertain how much, right? But we can guesstimate based on, the max, right? Although I just started wearing reading glasses, and my dad was like, okay, well, that's the leading indicator that your life is half over. That's the midpoint. He's like, out of all the studies, apparently, and I have nothing to back this up other than he said it's true.
But your dad.
So take this with a grain of salt, although he does tend to research things very well. When you get reading glasses, that's the best indicator that your life is halfway done. I'm like, okay, so I've got till 90. And he's like, well, it's plus or minus 5 years. So I'm like, okay, I've got 85 to 95. So I've got like 40 years left on the low end, if I'm lucky and I don't get hit by a car tomorrow. I
mean, it's also pretty funny because, like, technically, to say to your dad, isn't that just generally, like, we could all say 85 to 95 years is probably.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I know it's not such, but he's saying some people get glasses earlier.
Oh dear.
So that would, like, if you get glasses at 40, your projected lifespan would actually be
75,
75 to 85.
Okay.
If you got glasses at 50, you could push it up again.
Okay. All right.
Have you gotten reading glasses yet?
I have not, but I'm just like so myopic that I've just basically been half blind since I was 7. So I don't know. It might just be that my eyes are slightly getting better at the distance. And in fact, I would need reading glasses, but for the fact that I can't see anything. I don't know. I'll have to look into this.
I've had perfect vision my whole life. So this has been like slightly traumatic for me to have to
like, geez.
And like all of a sudden I'm like, how does everybody else read shampoo bottles? Like, I don't even understand. Like literally I'm like in a whole new world here, which I'm not very happy about. I'm going to write about it soon. But anyway, All to say, we are all going to die, and that is no big secret. And yet we try to push it back and not think about it. And then we don't have it factor into our everyday decisions, because if you live every day as if you're about to die, then you wouldn't be a responsible person. You wouldn't like probably earn a living, and like, you can't go every day eating like 5 Susie cakes, marble cakes or whatever. But although that does sound like fun, although there we go, fun. But your whole notion of what do we do with this limited time? How do we fit it in? How can people not think of this as a waste of time, but in fact, the most important time that they could spend? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, because I think that is the most common misperception about fun is people can roll their eyes and say, like, what are you, fun? I mean, seriously? I've got all these other things to do. Or there's all these problems in the world. Like, you want me to think about fun? Or isn't that something for just people who are privileged? Like, other people can't have fun. And I think that, yes, we need to have our basic needs met in order to think about anything beyond our basic survival. But I think it's really a misperception to think, A, that there's certain categories of people who can have fun and those who can't have fun. And then B, that it's not possible to be a quote unquote serious person and also to prioritize fun. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, is that far from being a frivolous, fun can help us with all these goals. So first and foremost, as we're talking about, fun will help us enjoy our own lives. And that should be enough. I think there's a really weird thing where, especially in America, but elsewhere as well, we don't feel like we have permission to enjoy our own lives. And that's really messed up if you think about it, because who is it doing any good for to not enjoy your life? I mean, you're not going to go jet skiing every day and not take care of your children. I've actually never jet skied, so that's not going to be a thing for me to work about anyway. But, it doesn't do anyone any good if you're suffering. Mm-hmm. And I think that, just to continue with our, existential conversation around the subject of fun, one thing I've been thinking about myself over the weekend is this book called I think it's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And it's written by a woman who worked in palliative care. And some of the top things were, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And then one of the last one is, I wish I'd given myself permission to be happy. Right. So I think that that's really important. But in terms of the other concerns, I think that, it's interesting how we just think about things in such a black and white and zero sum way. Like, if you're caring about fun, then you can't also care about climate change. But you can. And in fact, the more fun you're having, the more energized you'll be to take action on some of the serious things in the world. And perhaps most importantly, the more connected you'll be with other people. So many of our problems these days have to do with political polarization and our inability to see each other as human beings. But when you're having fun with someone, you're connected with them on a human level. You're not thinking about your differences. You're thinking about what brings you together. So in fact, I think that fun can be an important tool to actually solve some problems. And just as an example, one that I got from this book called Humor Seriously, which is great and I highly recommend.
I keep writing down these books you're talking about. Okay, keep going.
Oh, yes. So Humor Seriously, it'd be fun to have the authors on the show. The two Stanford professors who teach a class about humor in the business school. And they have this example, and there are 2 examples in their book, but one is of Madeleine Albright when she was Secretary of State. And she's at a conference where was it? It's in Asia, a major conference. And she's trying to negotiate with her Russian counterpart about some policy having to do with Myanmar. Something that's like heavy, right? It's like a big deal, right? America and Russia. Then she finds out there's a tradition at this conference where you're supposed to be in a skit before dinner. And someone's like, okay, you have to sing. And she kind of at first was like, what? And then anyway, long story short, there ends up being this thing where she teams up with her Russian counterpart, who should be her adversary. And they stay up late one night, and the Russians provide the vodka. And they rewrite the lyrics to the West Side Story song, I Just Met a Girl Named Maria, so that it is now East-West Story, and it's I Just Met a Girl Named Madeleine Albright.
Oh my gosh.
And they perform this at a dinner. Now, you might say that is ridiculous. What the hell are they doing? They're supposed to be there negotiating international policy. They're supposed to be adversaries. Like, what? This is a waste of money. They should be ashamed. No, in fact, what happened is they connected on a human level. They actually started a friendship. They still had huge issues with each other. They were not, going to agree on everything. But she said it completely changed the tenor of their negotiations, because from that point forward, they were able to connect as human beings. So it actually helped international diplomacy. And I think that's a really important example to keep in mind. And, in the book, they include some examples from George W. Bush's cabinet as well, where there's frequently this use of humor and levity and fun that from the outside might seem crazy. Like, apparently they saran wrapped Karl Rove's car, but it made them feel this sense of camaraderie. All this is to say that I think we think about fun all wrong. We think about it as something that should be at the bottom of our priority list, something we only get to have if everything else in life is going right. When in fact, it's not the result of human flourishing. It's actually a cause.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm thinking in my head, like if I were the president, we could, or, maybe we should run on this platform, you and me, on the ticket for an international fun day, right? And Monday, Tuesday, whatever, fun day. And then everybody would have to go just have fun all day with people that they didn't know very well. And what would happen if we all did that once a year, once a month?
I mean, yes. Yeah, they're actually in the UK, there is something called the Minister of Loneliness, which is so Harry Potter sounding.
I knew that.
I can't even.
I knew that for some reason, but yes.
Oh, it put it in my book, but
oh, maybe that's how I knew it.
That's funny. And I was laughing at myself because I was like, what does that person's business cards look like, right? But why don't we have a minister of fun?
Totally.
And yeah, I actually came up with an idea this weekend that I'm really excited about, that if anyone else out there is interested in trying this, because I was trying to figure out and am trying to figure out more and more ways to have fun in the middle of a global pandemic and also in the middle of winter, just kind of a downtime. And I came up with this idea that I want to try going forward, which is that for other friends, let me back up. I feel like so many of our interactions as parents involve the parents standing around watching kids have fun. Mm-hmm. And then when you try to do something with other parents and the kids are there, it's just not really that fun for the grownups a lot of times. Like you're constantly getting interrupted. Right. And even though you love your kids and blah, 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 you're kind of like, shut up. Right. Then I realized I'm a freelancer with a flexible schedule. Mm-hmm. And I also was thinking about how one of the common themes that came up when I asked people about their experiences of fun was rebellion, this feeling of playful rebellion, doing things that were slightly deviant. And I was thinking, what if, and then also I was trying to make plans with some friends to see each other, but they have 3 kids, it's like, and they're all under 5, really challenging. Then we came up with this realization that at the moment, all of our schedules are relatively flexible with like working from home and our chosen careers. So instead of trying to find a way to see each other in an evening, why don't we just see each other on a Wednesday morning? Why don't we just have a coffee date for adults? Woo! That's I'm saying this. It doesn't sound.
I am now owning the fact that I don't really like the nighttime. I don't like to leave my house. I don't like the dark. I don't like to drive in the dark. I don't like to be outside in the dark. I don't know. I think I have like childhood issues. I don't know what my problem is, but I'm like, I would much rather. That's why a lot of time when I have salons here or whatever, it's at 11:30. Like I am at my best at breakfast and I just go downhill all day. Like
it's so funny.
Like, I can't do a podcast at like when I have to do these things at 7, 8 at night. I'm like, okay, but I'm going to be either like so tired, I'm not making any sense, or I don't know.
Right, exactly. So we made this plan and I realized I'm so looking forward to Wednesday morning because it feels so deviant in a way to be like, oh, I'm not just going to sit in front of my email inbox at 8:30 in the morning. I'm going to drop my daughter off, or my husband will drop her off. And then we're going to come back and we're going to hang out and have grown-up time in the middle of a work day. Yeah. And then I was thinking, why don't I just do that regularly and call it like Fun Fridays and have a once a month open invite for any friends who have a flexible schedule who want to have a coffee break and just come over and have like a bit of adult time in the middle of a weekday morning. And anyway, I'm really excited about it.
Actually do this, Catherine.
They do?
Yeah.
Do they really? People have fun on Friday mornings.
People actually see friends for coffee and lunch during the day, even
Tell
though it's
me more,
working.
Zibby.
It's true.
Man.
It's true. I'll tell you, one of the most fun days I've had in the last like 10 years probably was when a fellow mom, this is at a school my kids don't even go to anymore, but she was turning 50 and she was older than me. Obviously anyway, it doesn't matter. She was turning 50 and she said, what I really want is to go to the movies with a bunch of girlfriends. And so we went to like a 10 o'clock showing of Bad Moms, and she brought us all disposable like wine cups and got us all the biggest candy from the store. And we sat there and laughed so hard. And we left. It was like 12:30. I had the best day.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. The next.
No, of course. The next time I'm like, oh, I'm too busy. I can't go to your birthday this year. And now I feel terrible about it. But anyway, it was. Really fun.
Isn't that interesting? Because it's like, oh, I'm too busy. I can't go to your birthday. Even though, as you just told me that story, you totally lit up and said it was one of the most fun times you've had in the past 10 years, right? Like, I think we do that too often to ourselves, even if we're intellectually aware. That was super fun. Here's an opportunity to do exactly the same thing. And you're like, yeah.
No, it's not that I had like things planned. I would have had to cancel all these things. And work stuff. I don't know.
I know. No, I know. It's hard. I'm also just laughing at the fact that apparently I'm so starved for, human contact in the pandemic. I'm like, no, guys, we could get together and drink a hot, let's call maybe coffee. We could have, what would we call it? A coffee date. Yes, a coffee date.
When the kids are at school. When I had more of a life, I used to be able to do that occasionally. In fact, that's what we do. Like our school has class coffees for each grade once a year. Which
does it feel naughty though? It needs to feel
I didn't go to
naughty.
I didn't even go.
Oh no!
Now I'm sounding less and less fun. I'm not making any time for fun. That's why I liked your microdosing section too, because I'm like, oh, okay, I don't need to do this for a long time.
But I think that's also like a good example, right? If the school, and I do try to drag, it's like if my daughter's school does stuff like that, I do try to get myself to do it because I feel like she's only in first grade. We haven't met any of the other parents because of the pandemic. So I'm glad I did, but that's an example where to me, it feels like a to-do. If it's like, okay, I've got on my schedule that I have to go and I'm going to make small talk with parents and hope that I find somebody that I gel with and that I can have a conversation. And often that does happen, but it feels like a little bit of a hurdle to do that. Yeah. Whereas to me, at least if I add this element of rebellion where I'm inviting people I already know who are friends who I really do love seeing, but I don't have many opportunities to just see as grown-ups without our families involved. Like that feels fun to me. So I think it might differ by person,
You're right.
But there's it's interesting to think about it where it's exactly the same activity, although we might have Irish coffee on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I've never actually even had Irish coffee. I might even hate it, but the idea feels so naughty. I just love it. Right. So I think that's interesting to think about how the exact same activity in a different context feels very different.
Yes. Very true. Interesting. All right. I'm getting all sorts of ideas on how to have more fun and why it's so important. You really need to block it off in your calendar though. I mean, I feel like I just don't leave enough time to do it. Right. Like,
Well, that's the other thing. So I'm doing a funtervention right now, which is going to be a rolling basis. So people can still join it if they want to at screenlifebalance.com. But it's the first step of that, as you know, I've got this acronym on my book, SPARK, and the S is for make space. And that's for exactly the reason you just said, is that you do need to clear out some things in order to have mental and emotional space to even think about this, because it will feel overwhelming and you will feel, it's so ironic, you'll feel resentful towards fun, poor fun, right? If you don't have a bit of space. And there's a number of ways to, I think, prioritize doing that. One is to create better boundaries with your devices, because one of the primary sources of distraction and interruption in our lives right now is the constant dinging from our phones. Actually, just yesterday I was thinking, I don't want to call them notifications anymore. I want to call them interruptions, because that's what is happening. So that's one thing. Then, as you mentioned, I wrote a bunch about Eve Rodsky's book, Fair Play, in my book, because Eve is amazing. I'm really happy I've gotten to know her personally since her book came out, her new book came out, Find Your Unicorn Space. But in her book, Fair Play, she writes all about how do you actually identify all the emotional labor and the work that goes into running a household that's not often acknowledged, and therefore it's not shared equitably. And that's another really crucial way to make space for fun, is to really talk with your partner or whoever you're running a household with about everything that goes into it and make sure it feels fair. Because if someone's carrying resentment, then they're not going to have much fun themselves. And then also they're going to feel resentful towards their partner for having fun. Yeah. That's not what we want. Ideally, you want both people to be having enough opportunities for fun, either on their own or together, that they're not resentful about the other person getting to have a bit of that. So there's a lot of ways in which we can and should make space for fun. Yeah, that I think is the important first step.
Well, see, what's happened is, like you said, we have connection and meaning and flow, because I've already gone over our time and didn't even realize it because I lost track of time.
I have no idea what time it is.
So there we go. Awesome. Well, I wish you lived in New York so I could join your Irish coffee date, although I probably would say no because I'm too busy. And then, but anyway, but I would want to go and I would have fun. So anyway.
Well, you know what? Let's use that as a metaphor for whatever Irish coffee dates present themselves to you next. Yes. Or bad moms. I mean, that just sounds very fun. Like that has so many elements of.
It was so great. I wish maybe I'll do that again. So anyway, maybe I'll organize a big screening or something. I don't know. Anyway, I gotta go. You gotta go. Bye. This was really fun. exactly what we're saying. And I'm going to come back to you about doing a panel because I really want to hear all three of you together.
I would love to do that. And I love both of them. Eve and Florence are fantastic. So that would be just such a treat. So thank you.
It's on my list.
Thank you for all you do to bring writers together and support writers and just spread writing, et cetera, et cetera. It's so appreciated.
It's fun for me. Okay. Bye, Catherine.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.